the hearings. This is very, very painful. Let's bring in our panel. Baier, New York, chief political correspondent of the Washington Examiner. Molly Hemingway, senior editor at The Federalist. Amy Walter, national editor for the Cook Political Report. And Washington Post columnist Marc Thiessen. Molly, your take today.
Well, the whole premise of today was that the movie would be better than the book, that the Mueller report didn't do what they wanted it to accomplish in book form, so if they had visuals, that it would help people understand the case against the president. What I don't think anybody expected was that Mueller would present himself as doddering, as lacking command of anything to do with the investigation, and thereby raising a whole host of questions about who actually was in charge of this Mueller investigation. A lot of people just gave it leeway because they respected him, and seeing today, I don't think anyone thinks that he was in charge. It had been previously reported that 13 of his 17 associates were Democrats, 0 were Republicans, 9 were Democratic donors, 6 were Hillary Clinton donors, some were pretty close allies of the Clintons, 1 attended a Hillary Clinton election rally. So I think you're going to start seeing many more questions about precisely who was running this investigation and to what end.
Amy, the question now is what goes forward,
right.
and we're going to deal with that in the second panel,
right.
But you listen to Democrats tonight, and there is like a dejected feeling that they had expectations for today.
This is absolutely not the day that Democrats had wanted it to be. I agree with the movie. If there's a Rotten Tomatoes rating, I don't know what the good or the bad is, like you're supposed to have more Rotten Tomatoes or fewer. It was a bad version of that movie. I do think that if you're thinking about, though, maybe one of the winners in this on the Democratic side is somebody like Speaker Nancy Pelosi and some of the moderates in the House who'd been pushing back against a rush to impeachment. They really don't want to see this. They'd rather see the House and their colleagues focused on some of these issues, like health care, as they did in the 2018 election. And so what I'm looking for is whether this actually tamps down, put the brakes on. I don't think it's going to change anybody's mind who does believe the president needs to be impeached. You're not going to walk away and say, oh, this, because of the Mueller hearing, I'm no longer in favor of this. But I do think that you're no longer going to see the number of Democrats saying, I favor impeachment, to continue to rise.
Byron, one of the big moments, and I was on the set for 8 hours, so people told me about the coverage on other channels, was that at the first hearing that dealt with obstruction, this one soundbite really set everybody off, and then was walked back a little bit later.
The reason, again, that you did not indict Donald Trump is because of OLC opinion stating that you cannot indict a sitting president, correct?
That is correct. I want to go back to one thing that was said this morning by Mr. Liu, who said, and I quote, "You didn't charge the president because of the OLC opinion." That is not the correct way to say it. As we say in the report, and as I said at the opening, we did not reach a determination as to whether the president committed a crime.
So there was this thought that it was the aha moment, and then, you know, the beginning of the next hearing, he walked it back.
Yeah, I got everybody excited for about an hour, and then it went away, which actually points to a bigger feature of today's hearings, which is, apart from the concerns about Mueller's performance, it didn't have any news in it. When Mueller said that he would have indicted were it not for the OLC ruling, that was a big deal, and then he walked it back. The thing that Democrats seem to feel is a great accomplishment was Mueller said that he did not exonerate the president. Well, we have known that since that day in March when Bill Barr, the Attorney General, wrote a letter summarizing the major findings of Mueller's report. He included it there, and we've known it ever since.
Let alone the argument about the standard in law and whether exoneration, as the president talked about, and I talked about with Congressman Radcliffe, is, you know, the right standard to apply here. Marc, your thoughts?
I agree with Byron, and look, I don't think any of us knew that Bob Mueller was so fragile, and that was a surprise. But other than that, this was a slow-motion train wreck anyone could have seen from the day that the Mueller report came out. It was clear that he had not, for most Americans, this was about a conspiracy with Russia to undermine our democracy. And once that it was established by the Mueller report that did not happen, then the Democrats should have just said, okay, case closed, let's move on. And there was a poll in May when this came out, Harvard-Harris poll, 80% of Americans say they want their congressional representatives working more on infrastructure, healthcare, immigration than investigations of Donald Trump. They decided not to do that and to focus on this, and it's completely overshadowed their agenda. Washington Post reported that the DCCC, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, did focus groups, which showed that Americans believe they're preoccupied with investigations, and it's completely overshadowing their agenda. That's why Pelosi was the winner today. I agree with Amy, because she's been trying to to push them off of this and get attention on the agenda she won on so she can keep the House. And this is taking the wind out of the sails.
It seemed like they had planned for something bigger, Amy. You know, they obviously had the Russia stuff, which is serious, and Republicans and Democrats say it's serious. But they went with the obstruction. They planned for it. They practiced for it. There were mock hearings. There were people who were Jim Jordan and Bob Mueller in mock hearings, and then this.
And then nothing. Right. Look, I think that there are plenty of folks who privately would tell you they knew that this hearing was unlikely to change any Americans' minds. And I think it's still the case that moving the ball on how people feel about Mueller, the investigation, whether they think impeachment is the right thing or the wrong thing to do, wasn't going to be changed. The only question was whether there was going to be some more pressure from activists and from their own members to push this forward. So in some ways, it's like this needed to happen. And now the Band-Aid has been sort of pulled off. And theoretically, Democrats go on and do other things. But realistically, it's still going to be part of the discussion.
We're going to talk next about where we go from here, including all the questions about the investigation, the IG, and what's coming next. Now that the Mueller hearings are over, where